I want you to think about something. The people who, when they're hurt, just disappear. They don't slam a door, they just get quiet. And you don't even notice it happening until you realize you haven't really heard from them in a while. And by then, they've already decided something. I want to talk about those people today because I think there's a pretty good chance you are one of them, and an equally good chance you've never fully understood why. When most people think about emotional responses, they imagine two options. You either cry or you confront, you explode or you crumble. But there's a third, lesser-known option, and it's quieter. Frankly, it's more complex than either of those. And it happens because somewhere along the way, silence became the safest language these people ever learned. Let me explain what I actually mean by that. When a child grows up in an environment where expressing hurt leads to punishment, or worse, nothing, the nervous system does something remarkable. It starts to associate vulnerability with danger. The psychologist John Gottman spent decades studying how parents respond to children's emotions, and what his research on emotion-dismissing parenting consistently showed was that children who are repeatedly dismissed when they express pain not only learn to stop expressing it, but also to distrust the feelings themselves, to view their own emotional experience as something excessive or simply not worth voicing. That's a completely different thing from choosing silence. One is a strategy, the other is a belief that gets baked in, and that belief follows them everywhere. So, when someone hurts them as an adult, a partner, a friend, a colleague, they don't fight back. They reach for nothing. They pull inward. To them, it doesn't feel like giving up, but protecting themselves. There's a difference, and most people on the outside can't see it. It might look like coldness or indifference, like they don't care enough to fight. But that's not what's going on. What's actually happening is that they care so much that speaking feels unbearable, because speaking means hoping someone will hear them, and hoping means risking the possibility that nobody will. And that risk, the risk of speaking and being dismissed again, is something their entire nervous system has been trained to avoid. The relationships do matter, but they go quiet because it matters too much to survive being wrong about. That's a painful place to live. And here's something that took me a while to understand about them. Their silence isn't passive. It's actually doing a lot of work. It's containing grief, managing expectations, maintaining dignity, and running a quiet, constant background check of, is this person safe? Is it worth it? Will they understand? Or will I just be made smaller for trying? All of that happening behind a calm face, sometimes behind a smile. People who go quiet when they're hurt often have this very particular kind of dignity that looks to the untrained eye like detachment. They carry things without showing you they are. And a lot of the time, nobody asks because they appear fine since they've trained to seem it. The silence isn't the wound itself, but more like the scar tissue over the wound. Think about Julia, not a real person, but a very real pattern. She's in a long-term relationship, and one night her partner makes an offhand comment about her in front of friends. Something small, probably didn't even register for him. She laughs it off. She goes to the bathroom, looks in the mirror for a second, and then comes back and spends the rest of the evening being perfectly pleasant. On the drive home, he asks if she's okay. She says yes, and she means it in the sense that she has already folded the hurt into a drawer somewhere and closed it. He doesn't ask again. 3 weeks later, she realizes she's been slightly less available, not consciously, just less there. She doesn't know how to explain it. He doesn't know there's anything to ask about. And the distance grows from something so small it didn't even have a name. That's the thing about this pattern. The wound is rarely the big, dramatic argument. It's the small moments that never got spoken. And eventually, there are enough of them that the unsaid starts to take up more space than what does get verbalized. Something that took researchers decades to properly document is that it's not only an emotional phenomenon, there's a physiological cost to it. Psychologist James Gross, originally conducted at UC Berkeley, found that when people suppress emotional expression, outward behavior decreases, but the inward physiological response doesn't go away. In fact, it tends to increase. The body holds what the face isn't showing. Sympathetic nervous system activity, cardiovascular arousal. It doesn't vanish just because the expression does. The hurt is still there. It's just not where anyone can see it anymore. And that has consequences. For health, yes. But more than that, for intimacy. Because you cannot be truly close to someone who doesn't believe it's safe. You can be near them, but closeness requires a kind of openness that these people have had to strategically close off just to survive. That said, and I think this matters, this isn't a permanent state. People change, and so do these people, especially when they encounter, maybe for the first time, someone who is genuinely patient, someone who doesn't punish the silence or interpret the quiet as rejection, someone who just stays and waits and asks gently and doesn't make a big thing out of the asking. That's what turns the dial for these people. Now, here's what I want you to ponder for a bit. These people don't go quiet forever, right? What they do is they go quiet and they watch. They watch to see if you notice. They watch to see if you come back, to see if without them saying a word, you pick up on the fact that something's shifted. And if you do, if you reach for them without being asked, that can be more healing than almost anything they could have said out loud. Because what they're testing, and they're usually not even consciously aware they're doing this, what they're testing is whether you actually see them without pretense, without them having to perform the pain for you to take it seriously. But if you don't notice, they file that information away quietly, and they revise their understanding of the relationship. Not dramatically, but quietly. That's the part that can appear quite scary about this pattern. The grand gestures won't change a thing. Something much smaller and much harder, consistent, patient presence. That's what teaches a nervous system that has been trained for danger that maybe this time safety is actually an option. If you recognize yourself in this, if you're someone who goes quiet, who pulls back, who would rather carry something alone than risk the discomfort of being misunderstood, I get it. Your silence makes sense. It was built for a reason, and it protected you when you needed it. But there may come a point where it starts costing you more than the vulnerability would. That's just the thing about survival strategies. They're built for the conditions that created them, not necessarily for the life you're trying to build now. And if you love someone who goes quiet, if you've ever watched someone you care about disappear into themselves and not known what to do, the thing I'll leave you with is this. Don't fill the silence with noise. Don't push. Don't interpret the quiet as apathy. Just make yourself safe to return to. That's the whole task. Just be the kind of person that makes coming back feel worth the risk. Because for someone who has spent years deciding whether or not to speak, or if their pain is worth the exposure of being seen, that decision is never small. One last thing, and I only mention things I'd actually use myself. There's a link in the description and pinned comment to a bundle I think a lot of you will find genuinely useful. It's a 20-file collection of 7-day guides and planners built around the things that most people are quietly dealing with, focusing on self-awareness, mindset clarity, better habits, focus, lowering stress, sleep, and practical frameworks you can actually apply, helping to rebuild your focus one day at a time. Each one gives you a specific daily action, not just information, and I found it really works. I hope you check it out. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on my future uploads.